And this is part two. I'm talking with Dr. Katherine Horton and Ole Dammegård. And please, Katherine, continue.
So thank you very much, Alexandra. I'm just going to remind people where I was just for 1 second. So in part one, I was talking about the seminal paper that came out of ETH Zurich, of their systems analysis department. And I want people to understand the importance of this, because what Ole, Alexandra, and I are running are essentially a criminal investigation, trying to get at the very top. Who are the people involved? And ETH Zurich provided one of the big pieces of evidence when they analyzed the commercial realm. So they pinpointed the top of the pyramid, pointing at the lead institutions that are involved in this global cartel. And so we now have actual court evidence. Before, we could just blame the banksters, you know, because we kind of knew that they were involved. But now we actually have physical or, you know, material evidence that yes, they are involved. So if somebody asks you who is at the very top of the economic cartel, you can point to this paper and say, well, you know, it's Commerzbank, Deutsche Bank, and so on and so on. And as soon as you have this map, everything will become clear, and you can suddenly build bridges between a lot of different people talking about different topics. For example, this ties into what Ole was saying, and this is why I brought up the franchises, because these are commercial companies. And there are banks investing in commercial companies. So if you're running a mega global mafia organization and you want to wash money, you need the help of your bankers. So as soon as you spot, for example, Deutsche Bank and Credit Suisse and UBS at the very top, you can be sure that these people will be involved in the washing of the money globally, and therefore they will also be doing the financing of the false flag attacks, which do take a lot of financial input because you have to pay all these people. And another thing I want to point to is one guy who is not on the panel, but is also very relevant. Professor Bill Black recently came out and he said publicly that Deutsche Bank is a criminal enterprise. This was unprecedented for former financial regulators to say that. And I could immediately understand that he was right, because Deutsche Bank is featuring here right at the top. So I knew immediately, yeah, that's exactly where he has to investigate. And he came from a different direction, which is looking at, for example, Deutsche Bank's financial operations. And, you know, and this is why I'm saying maybe one way forward is also for these false flags to maybe, you know, generate evidence, go into court, and then subpoena the financial information related to the people we can see in these false flags and the organizers, and find out what their finances were doing at around that time.
Can I comment? I just want to say, wow, that is powerful. That I would very much like a copy of that. And also this thing you say about franchises is super interesting for me, because what I'm discovering more around my father's background, I believe he was very high up in the creation of Gladio in Denmark, that he was recruited, he was part of the resistance movement in the Second World War, and that he was recruited in the end of the war, believing in, I think he was a good guy, he was really believing in it and so on. But what happened was that there's about 10 years that I don't know what he was doing. There's a total blank thing. And then he comes from nowhere, and suddenly he's what is called the district CEO of Copenhagen for ESSO, which is Standard Oil, which is Rockefeller. And his task was to be, you know, there were all of these franchises, the people that were taking care of the gas stations. And I mean, in a situation also, in a crisis situation, fuel is of super importance. You can either shut it off or you can control who gets it. And so in any type of defense or attack, fuel is vital. So his task was to be the go-between and make sure that all of these gas stations was functioning perfectly. But the thing is that all of the ones that I remember from my childhood, because I came with him in the car sometimes, I still remember these people were former members of the Danish resistance movement. So I think that this gas station network Standard Oil, Rockefeller, that was Gladio. It was a cover for Gladio, or Stay Behind, or Absalon was the name in Denmark. So I think that these networks also, I see when we suddenly had to move to Sweden overnight very urgently. I have a romantic version because my mother loved the forests of Sweden, and she loved flowers and bees and whatever. So we moved, so we didn't even have time to say bye-bye to our friends. Okay, does that make sense? I don't think so. But now that I'm finding out more and more that he was being threatened and there were things going on, which was the reason we changed countries. And then the place we came to in Sweden was out in the middle of absolute nowhere, like 1 kilometer to the nearest neighbor, out in the middle of the forest. And over the next few years, the 4 farms around us was bought up by people from the Danish resistance movement. You know, so suddenly in Sweden we had this network also where the ones that we bought the farm from, he was a military guy who was in charge of about 20 farms. I mean, who's got 20 farms? We're looking at a network here again. And our closest neighbor was the CEO of Scandinavia for Johnson & Johnson. So we have Standard Oil, Rockefeller, and then Johnson & Johnson just down the road. I mean, what? This is how it's done. How these infiltrations and networks are. And I just want to say, this is not only speculation, because I thought, if what I believe is true, that we left our country, we changed countries, everything overnight, started a whole new life from scratch in the middle of absolute nowhere. We didn't even have running water or toilet or anything like that. From living, my dad was offered like a director's villa in one of the top exclusive areas of Copenhagen, but refused to take it, because I think that it was in the mid-60s where suddenly Stay Behind or Gladio was taking this direction into starting to attack the population of and I think that he stood up and said, I'm not doing it. And so he had 2 or 3 colleagues that died out of stress, and then suddenly we moved country. So I thought, I've been going through my childhood, and there's all of these weird things that I've been like, what was that? Because one of the things was that I mean, we lived in the nowhere. He was not into sports at all. None of us were into tennis. And suddenly he decided, I'm going to build a tennis court. So he built a tennis court by himself with the help of a bulldozer. I mean, he put down such an effort into making this tennis court out in the middle of the forest. He never played once. My mother didn't play. We didn't play. And we had this tennis court that he kept immaculate, even made the white lines and all. And so this is the thing that I've been like, what the hell? Was that some kind of midlife crisis, or what was that all about? So the more I started understanding what was going on, also he died with a US Air Force ring on him that he had all the time. How does a Danish citizen get a US Air Force ring on him for years and years? Anyway, so I've been thinking more and more about this tennis court. Either was it some kind of cover? You know, like, was it a helipad? If what I'm suspecting is correct, or maybe it was a cover for one of these gun depots, you know, like with stashed weapons, mines, bazookas, you name it, radio equipment. Was that it? So I just went recently on a tour in Sweden, and I have this beautiful tour manager who's up for everything. So I said, are you up for a treasure hunt? I mean, this is a totally wild goose chase, but are you up for it? He says, go, go, go. What do you want? So I said, have you got a metal detector? He said, no, but I can get one. 1 hour later, he called me. I said, I got one. So when we got to Sweden, we drove a long way out in the middle of the forest to where I grew up. It has now changed a lot. It doesn't look the same at all. Where there used to be forest, now that's cut down. And where there wasn't forest, now there's a lot of trees now and bushes and branches or whatever. So I went up, we met the owner who had been living there for 16 years. And I said, I lied. I said, I dropped something when I was a kid here. Would you mind if we go and check with a metal detector? He said, down by the tennis court. He said, I've heard of that tennis court, but I've never ever seen it. And he's been living there 16 years, so it's been a long time with trees growing and all. So anyway, so he stayed indoors because I wanted us to go alone. And we went down there, and I couldn't see where it was because there were all of these trees, everything. But I knew there was a slope of the hill, and then it was absolutely flat where the tennis. So I was in between the trees. I filmed it also. I was more or less crawling around on all fours and just like, we're on it now. This is it. I can see it. Had I not known it, I would never have found it. I mean, I would just walk straight through the forest and like, there's nothing here. But anyway, since I knew exactly where it was, so we went there with a metal detector, and there was nothing. And I knew this was such a wild whatever. So my friend, he said, listen, I'm not sure if it's working, so I'm going to go and get the manual, because also there was this red button on it. We didn't know, should we press it or not? So he went to the car, was looking for the manual, and suddenly I came to the edge of the tennis court. Beep, 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 beep. There's a 1.5 meter times 15 meters, a rectangular area along the edge of the tennis court. Then it comes to where the tennis court ended, where there's a rock that was stood up. Like it doesn't look natural at all. It's just standing up like this. If you don't know it, you would never notice it. So, but there I knew, because there used to be what is called I think it's called a canopy tree, a very high tree. And that could also be seen from the air, because I've been like, why did he paint the white stripes? So if we didn't even play, aerial view, helicopter pad. Also, I spoke to Cody about this. He said, your dad was a spook and so was your mom. What? Anyway, but he said that these poles for the tennis net are metal and can be very easily used as antennas. So anyway, so we found a 1.5 meters times 15 meters. That is a major area coming to the corner of the tennis court, and then it goes in a 90-degree angle out 1.5 meter, and I don't know, 4 or 5 meters at least. So I'm telling you, am I speculating? Are these fantasies? Are that a coin or a can down there 15 times 1.5 meters? I think not. I think that is one of these depots right there. And the area with the strings of farms, it's a stay behind network. It's Gladio. And I've spoken to Cody, and he says it's quite common for intelligence agencies to have what they do is they purchase a series of farms or properties so that people can very fast be moved in between these areas. So should something happen, boom, move it to the next house, the next house, the next house, or whatever. So what we're talking about is not just speculation. We are onto something here. And I think that actually it was my father came to me in a dream about 6 months ago, and he said, the key is in the ring. The key is in the ring. I woke up with that. The key is in the ring. The key is in, what the hell is that? And then I remembered the ring. That's the only thing I inherited from him, is that American US Air Force ring. And so I'm discovering so much about my childhood now. It's massive, I tell you. It's involving all kinds of weird stuff. But it's so much bigger than just our family background. We're talking about this franchise, this networking, this hidden crime syndicate, violent terror tool that is trying to destroy us. That is one we're onto.
You know that the ring, sorry to interrupt, I will pass the microphone back to you, Alexandra, but the ring, you know what it reminds me of? So this goes into cartel signaling, and I was kind of rooting around in stories like that. And one of the things I keep, it goes back to communication, right? You said that, they would communicate with HQ, but they wouldn't really be aware of the full picture because of compartmentalization. Now, when you have to communicate like that, especially in a situation of war, there are certain recognition signals where you can authenticate yourself to people higher up who are above your level, but they're not necessarily, your line of chain of command, because in a situation of war, things might get a bit, fast and, just mixed up. But what these are access passes. Okay, so your dad would know who to show this to and how to use it, but it's an access pass, I think. Now, the other thing that immediately I thought about, because there are other people around the world who have people or had people in the military who were handed down objects that look like what the hell is that about? Why should I care? And the parents say, no, you better hold on to this one, you know? And people don't understand why. What is it about this object? Well, it's the meaning. It's like it's an access pass. It's an authenticated symbol in the chain of command. Now, the other thing that also immediately rings alarm bells, if people come to you in a dream, Ole, it's synthetic telepathy. It's Intel talking to you. You know, do not for 1 second into any sort of esoterics, because that's what they aim for. So they did that to me. And you have to remember if the dream is very vivid, if you actually talk to people, it's very interactive. It's probably a virtual reality thing. So when they wanted to scare my parents, they even did that to my mother. And suddenly my mother called me in tears. She was in hysterics, and she's a very hardened woman. And she said, look, I just had this dream that you were dead and they were going to cremate you. And I just had to say goodbye to you, but I could see you, you know. And she said, it was so vivid, I could see you. And I was like, Mom, it's so vivid because it's not a dream. It's a broadcast, you know. It's a movie they played in your head. So I just want to say, be warned. But then again, also, it's you know, they play with all of us and they send us messages. And I agree with the message. Yeah, the key is probably in the ring. And the other thing you might, you know, think about, Ole, is that if your dad was that high up, he was very high up in the hierarchy, and there's a network of people who know your dad or knew your dad, but know you and your mother. And it might actually be the reason why, you know, unlike your friends who've been murdered, you're not dead yet, because there's this invisible network that is there. Even if they're not actively protecting you, you're one of these bargaining chips, you know, you're one of the people on their side. If you go down as one of their soldiers, a lot more people will get very angry about that and will be activated, you know. So be aware that there might be this huge network, and maybe your mother is now somebody to ask, you know, about what the hell is going on, you know, if she's still alive.
Oh, she's got angel wings as well. But you come up with some interesting points, I tell you. You really do. Because it's, I mean, we moved to Sweden. Is it okay if I talk about these things a bit? Because I think it's, even though it's off topic, it's still right on, spot on. Because like when we came to Sweden, he started, I mean, it was the middle of nowhere. We didn't know anyone. And suddenly my father was sort of drinking buddies with one of the neighbors who was, he was in the court system. And the other drinking buddy was the police chief. I mean, we're talking about a tiny little village, a town, but it's still key people. And the only one that he really had contact with was the local shopkeeper. I mean, a tiny little shop, but that is one spider in the web for that whole area. You know, where you can...
The shop talks to everybody, right? If it's the only shop in town, everybody has to go through there. So it's a key position.
It's a key position for communication. I'm just going to go and buy some eggs. But what you do there is you go and if there's anything going. And another one, he used to go with a Christmas flower every single year to the local piano teacher. And it's like, they didn't know. And then I found out that her husband was a very high up Freemason. I mean, 10th degree, that is very high up in Sweden. And I'm like, who were you giving the Christmas flower? I do not think it was for the piano teacher. I think there was a reason to go there and see that guy. Yeah. So there were all of these things going on. And another neighbor we had that was very involved with our family and in a strange way. Awful. The woman was, I don't say awful a lot, but she gave me the creeps. But their son-in-law's father was a Swedish spy, and I was asked to take care of his house here in Spain after he died, just because we knew each other from in the old days. I never knew him, I never met him. But the kids that are in their 60s now, they said that he was a spy, so I thought, okay. okay, spy. I mean, I've never really met a spy before, at least that I know of. But
you grew up with them.
I know.
You grew up with them. That's what you realize now. Everybody was a spy, Ole.
But in his house, that was very Freemasonic in the paintings, are very dark. I did not like the feeling there at all. But they were like, there were certificates that, as far as I understood, he was an admiral in the US Navy. He had a license. I saw his license to fly fighter planes. And I still have his ID as a UN peace commissioner, he and the woman he was living with. I mean, it's on a level. And there are things like, I just had to tell you this one as well. It's like, we had, when I grew up, my brother, in his room, there was this desk, really ugly desk, and on the side of it was sprayed, you know, with these kind of template spray, US Air Force Base, Thule, Greenland. That is, during the Cold War, that was a super, super secret and very, very important spy station on the upper east, west, northwest beach of Greenland. I mean, there's nothing there except this spy station. And so how the hell did a desk get there, an ugly old desk, get from that to our home? And so, it's a long story, but I just remember my dad would say, sometimes, you know, he just mentioned that once he was on an oil tanker, and it sounded like he was just there because he was working for Esso. I know the name of the boat. It was Esso Aarhus, MS Esso Aarhus. And he said, well, in the storm, it was going up and down and up. But we never heard anything about where he was going, why he was going. And then the more I find out, I believe that he was up there. And because how can you transport an old desk thousands of kilometers or a long distance from Greenland to Denmark? That would cost you a fortune, and an old desk, who would care? But if you got a big oil tanker, I mean, bring it on. You can take the house as well. It won't matter because they're so big, you know. So I think maybe he brought that home as some kind of weird, bizarre. And another one is like, I'm finding out people that were close to him or in the same military installations in the end of the Second World War, beginning of NATO's creation. One of them, they're exactly the same age. They were in the same southern city of Denmark, very close to the German border. And it seems like all three of them, there are three of them, left for the States in '52. I think my dad as well. And I went to see the family of one of the other guys, and the daughter had no idea about anything, and we were talking, and then she said, well, by the way, this thing with your dad's ring, well, my dad had a photo that he thought was very nice, and it was very precious to him. Do you want to see it? I said, yeah, for sure. So she brings in this photo of this guy, and he's in full combat outfit, even with bushes on the helmet. And guess who's standing next to him? There are two people on this photo. Dwight Eisenhower. And the third one went to the US the same year, and he said that he was an elevator operator. Okay, so he moved there to become a dentist, but instead he worked as an elevator. In what building? The same building as Alan Dulles, the chief of the CIA, and John Foster Dulles, I mean the foreign minister of the US. I mean, right after the war, Montgomery came to this little military installation as well. So suddenly we have like my dad with all of these high level, Lemnitzer was there as well. I mean, these people were involved in the JFK assassination as well. That just totally changed everything. So where was and also my friend, when we were talking about her dad, because I said, my God, that's Dwight Eisenhower. Is it really? Yes, it is. I almost fell off the chair. And so I said, have you by any chance got any like letters or papers? Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of them. So we started looking through them. And there's one letter from when he was in America being educated as a driver instructor from Fort Benning in Georgia. That's special ops. That is super special ops. Fort Benning is not just any military installation. It is the one for assassins, for special ops, for the School of America. I mean, the whole shebang.
Well, you know what you describe, it sounds so crazy to you because you were looking at your parents as normal people. But as soon as you think about spies, well, what you're mapping out, Ole, is the old Vatican Intel Masonic network. So the Masons are front for Vatican Intel. And I'm trying to get across to people this realization that MI6 and the KGB and Danish and US Intel have never, ever existed as separate entities, ever in their history. They are all branch offices of Vatican Intel. So that's it. End of story. It's very hard for people to wrap their head around, even senior intel, whistleblowers. But I'm telling you, even during the Cold War, the KGB and the CIA and, whatever NSA, right? They were all different branch offices of the same corporation. There was never any difference. And the only thing that there was compartmentalization, and this is how actually in their world, they are all intermixed and they are all, as you said, there are no national boundaries. So to them, only the Masonic hierarchy matters. So where are you in this cartel organization? At what level? Because then you will be mixing with people on your level internationally, And if your dad was organizing Gladio, the stay behind in Denmark, he was pretty high up in the Masons. So actually you should talk to Alexandra because she knows all about the symbols. So I wanted to say that Alexandra was the person who hasn't introduced herself in her work, but I tell you guys, she is the absolute expert on what I call cartel signaling, which is the secret cartel language, which is they didn't just have radio communications because that can be intercepted. They have their symbolisms, and that's where these rings and access passes come in, and that's a universal language. And that's why you find it in false flags, because it's the old communication symbols.
Yeah.
Can I sorry. Katherine, can I ask you, because Cody suggests he thinks that my mom was in as well. She was a very beautiful woman. She spoke 5 languages. She was a translator. She was a super, typewriter.
You describe it as spy. She was probably a honeypot. I mean, sorry to say that, but they pair up intel agents with really attractive, good-looking women, because also, if your dad is high up in the Masons, they want, beautiful women are part of the accolade. It's not just the CEO flat in Copenhagen. A beautiful woman comes with the package of the cartel, so... Yeah, it's like all this together. I mean, what's the statistical probability, But then on the upside, you are the son of a very high up Mason, so you actually have a say. Maybe it's time you actually, you take your CEO post back.
Oh God!
I realize now, Ole, if I want something sorted in my targeting case, I should ask you. You should start sending commands. Dig out the weapons cache, kick some ass, Ole, and then we talk. This is true. We discover what all this our personal histories are like. But I tell Alexandra will have the clues. About the secret signaling. We have to take a very seriously.
Can I just tell you about some other stuff? It's
continue, Ole, continue.
Is it okay, Alexandra? I'm sorry if I take up too much time, but it's just this is quite confusing to me. And so when I was a kid. Since we moved to Sweden, I was 8 years then, but we went to Denmark every summer, and there were these people that we went to see, my grandfather and grandmother, who I think my grandfather was very much involved in this whole thing as well. But there was especially these friends where we went. They had a little farm, and in the barn, they had a shooting range up on the top. They had built up with hay bales, so that you could enter into. It looked like if you came there and just didn't know anything, you would think, okay, it's hay for the horses that they didn't have. But there was an entrance into it, and you could go in there, and there was a firing range, so you could shoot whatever type of thing. And there were weapons everywhere, even like Bren guns, like these things, machine things that with a stand. They were sort of in the wardrobe. And I mean, I used to be very much into guns. I wanted to be a gunsmith. So for me, I was super interested. But and I didn't think it was anything unusual. And it was with a lot of people that we went to see, there were all of these weapons. I mean, I was even offered a machine gun when I was 13. And it's like, now when I think of it, it's like, that's not normal. And my father's boss in the resistance movement during the Nazi occupation, he had a villa out on the exact edge of a very famous cliff. It's like the White Cliffs of Dover, but it's in Denmark. And what is important that I've not understood before is like the east coast of Denmark was the front line in the Cold War, because Finland was occupied by the Russians, Sweden was neutral, and there, boom, you have little Denmark. And anyway, so his former boss in the resistance movement, where we sometimes went very close to that area, playing around, swimming, having a nice time. In a few years ago, they opened up what is now a Cold War museum. It's an underground bunker, super high-tech equipped, 18-meter under the ground tunnel system, where the entrance was more or less in this guy's villa. So I'm like, did we go and swim there because my dad was 18? I'm just going to go and buy some cigarettes, have a nice time, and boom, and we're sort of running around in the grass, not knowing what's going on there. And it just keeps moving. Where we were living, all of these places are very strategic, And so I think, yeah. And my parents did not have wedding rings. I mean, and they are the old school. In those days, you always had, and I never saw them close physically. So it's like Cody says, this is an arranged marriage. Your your parents were spooks. That's what he said. Some kind of intelligence operatives on some level.
Well, and probably so was your grandfather. I mean, you said your grandfather was involved. That's what I would expect. Now, the thing is for you, Ole, is the way the Masons work is that... Oh,
don't mention them. Oh,
yeah, sorry. No, but it's you have to raise up to it, Sorry, it's across Africa. But it's like, but then again, I'm all about recapturing and system judoing, okay? Yeah. So, you have to apply the lever where you can. So if your grandfather was really high up, the way it works is that if your father was, for example, the eldest son, of course he would be placed, he would start on that rank of the Masons, or, get his way up to there, because no one in the crime architecture wants to lose their place, and for a long time, the vast majority of Masons didn't think about the Masons as an organized crime syndicate. They still don't. They think it's for the betterment of the world. But it's actually at the very top, it's a crime syndicate, and the Masons are front organization of the old Jesuits, which are Vatican Intel. So nothing new. But if your grandfather was in it, then your father was in it, and the Masonic expectation would be that you would be in it. So if you're going around and, blowing the stuff on the false flags, half of the Masons are thinking, well, what's he doing? What's the son of so-and-so doing? Like, there must be a bigger plan, and we're not initiated. So, hey, whatever. He's the man, right? I mean, you won't know what he's doing.
It's super interesting what you're saying, because I've never seen my father's dad, as anything. But then again, he was the youngest doctor in that area, which is the type of person that would be recruited for the Masons. And then my granddad was on my mother's side, and you got an author in Switzerland who has written about Gladio, Daniel Genser, and I've got one chapter from his book where he's talking about Denmark, and he said when NATO started recruiting people for the Gladio network through these intelligence agencies in Denmark, the three groups they concentrated on were top people from the resistance movement. That's my dad. former prisoners from a specific prison called Vestre Fængsel in Copenhagen. That's where my granddad, my mother's father, was sat. He was there for 52 days because he had helped Jews to Sweden. Or there was a concentration camp in northern Germany called Neuengamme. That is where the guy that drove us to Sweden very hastily, he helped us move. We moved without furniture, we moved without clothes, we moved with a cat, and boom, off we go. And he was the guy that bought the third farm. So from these three groups that he says, it's tick, tick, tick. And I think also my granddad was on my mother's side. He was super into the English church in Copenhagen, the St. Alban church. And I mean, he lived for that church. But when you look at these hidden networks, very often in resistance movements, the churches and the mosques are central. Preachers and priests and stuff are the center of communication. And so St. Alban's church in Copenhagen is here. And the museum of the Danish resistance movement is there. It's like 100 meters in between, and then 200 meters is the royal castle. Yep. And in between it, there are all of these statues of British and American and Danish officers that have, so-called heroes from the two different wars. And I'm sorry but I get very sort of, since this is so personal for me, when like I said, there was three different people that went, I think, 52 to the US. The guy who was an elevator operator, he brought home a Chevrolet 55 Cabriolet, brand new, from the wages of an elevator operator. I think not. I mean, I really do not think that is possible, but he did. He still has it. He's 94 years old now. My dad, in 1958, officially living in a bus behind a gas station, had a 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air, brand new, in 1957. That's like having a Lamborghini, And he said that it was only him and the king who had that specific model.
Yeah, well, there you go then. I think, Ole, when I'm listening to this, I think you should start making some phone calls, okay? Because it sounds like you have a direct link to the Danish, top people and the Swedish royal household. But here's a tip that kind of backs you up. So why are priests involved in churches? Well, it's because it's Vatican intel. They're actually even higher. So the churches would be the HQ, right? Where you pick up the Vatican intel, the orders. Now, what is it about elevators? If you think about a big building, which also, as you said, Alan Dulles was in the building, what's about the elevator boy? Well, he looks like nothing, but he's going between all the floors. And when people step into an elevator, if there are no surveillance cameras, it's back in the day, metal, some were wood, but, metal encasing, so pretty much radio protected. You can have, while this thing is moving, a private conversation, pass some words, and then the go-between, the elevator boy, passes it on to the next person who steps into the elevator. From the outside, it's absolutely nothing, and there's Alan Dulles on one floor, and there's other floors with front companies. That's it. That's how it's done. But that's why the elevator boy gets rich and gets paid off with a big fat car, The thing about the desks, though, the desk is really important, because you're right. Why the hell would somebody put, you said, an ugly desk? Why would it be like spray painted with US, based tool? I mean, that's a bit, it's not very secret, is it? But it's kind of like a hands off warning. It's like, this is property of US based tool. So all the other Masons, please, don't take it as loot. Why is that important? Well, I suspect it might have some communication technology. If it's a very heavy desk, I think you should maybe, if the desk is still around, put it through an airport x-ray machine. And the other thing is, if it's not something big, like that shows up on x-ray, it could be, microlithography. Sometimes names of people to contact would be their contact stuff. There's a lot of information you can embed in material that people would only see if they know where to look. It looks like a fold from woodworm, But actually, when you look at it under a microscope or magnifying glass, it actually is carved in the names of people, you know, who should be points of contact and stuff like that. So all the spy gear, you know, just goes into that.
Katherine, can I ask you another one? I mean, this is, I am not going to be able to sleep for another 4 days, I think, because my head is spinning at the moment. But my dad's ring, I've got it here somewhere. It's not only an American Air Force ring, but it's an amethyst in it. The stone is an amethyst, which is purple. And it's so worn, so I cannot see the year. But I've checked with other years of the Navy's graduates and so on, and they say that color indicates nobility or royalty.
Illuminati. I think it's the purple, isn't that the Illuminati color, Alexandra?
Oh.
Remember the bishops in the Vatican with their rather gay-looking purple? Sorry, you know what I mean, right? I mean,
no, because
Sorry.
no, because I'm sort of like, is it possible that, you know, like that my family has some strange tie to this Danish royal family, and I think possibly, you know, like when you look at other countries and so on, very often the king or the prince have had some lovers, you know, and suddenly, oops, a baby. Oh, very sorry about that. We can't accept him, but we will fund his education or whatever, you know. So suddenly, officially, you're the dad, but it's actually the king or whatever. And I think that because also we had this crystal thing in the ceiling, that there was some of my relative, a woman down the line, who was the lover of the Danish king or prince that was given that. And I think possibly, I'm trying to find out if somewhere in the line of my dad or mother, or I think that, I don't know, but that there was some kind of connection, you know, maybe through blood, to the royal families. And since then, we came in under this, on this strange path, officially farmers, but there's all of these connections going up into.
Well, I mean, you have a purple stoned, you know, ring from the U.S. Air Force. Oh, good God, yeah. Alexandra has to analyze it because she's the field expert. But I mean, yeah, this is possible. But you know, one key question I have is when you tell me that somebody who was organized Gladio in Denmark had to flee because this entire criminal cartel started, you know, they wanted to change direction and people who didn't pull sides. You know, the fact that you fled to Sweden, so it can only mean two things, and this is what I wanted to lead on to, but I was too shy. Number one is that Sweden is not quite as batshit crazy as all the other royal households, as we now learn, right? Which I don't know anything about these royal households, only what I get from whistleblowers. And so far, I haven't heard any serious sick stuff from the Swedish royal household, but I heard enough about the British and the Belgian. Thank you very much. So is it the case that they are normal and not fully in the Illuminati nonsense yet? I don't know. So this is one option I wanted to ask you guys about, if you know about it. And number two is, are there family ties? You know, could they flee there because it's all one big family? So if it's not safe in Denmark, then you just go to basically your uncle. You never knew that, you know, the Swedish king might be your uncle or whatever, you know, or your father's uncle, or who knows.
No, we had no connection to anyone as far as I know. And when it comes to the Swedish royal family, like Prince Bertil, he was the Grand Master of the Freemasons, and he died some years ago. But and as far as I know, the current king stepped down and said, "I'm not going to be a member," or the Grand Master. But I know that when I managed to get into the headquarters in Stockholm, the Swedish Queen had just been there donating, I can't remember how many millions, if it was 2 million or something, but I mean a massive amount. So they're totally in on it. And her father, the Swedish Queen's father, was a Nazi living in Brazil, as far as I remember. So.
Well, but what you have to remember, just like, I mean, I always try to be careful with every single royal, because just like your father might have been in, and to an outsider, oh, he's a Mason, clearly he's in the crime cartel, but you're not. There are people who are trying to get out And actually publicly saying that he's stepping down is not being part of, that's a big deal. The one thing we don't tend to underestimate is these people have guns to their head, you know, because the military is not there to protect them. The military is there to protect this huge criminal architecture. So as soon as one king pulls out and turns on the Masons, which is actually turning on Vatican intel on the Jesuits, the entire Jesuit network is there to assassinate them. And they regularly did. For example, there's Queen Beatrix, who was murdered at the Vierwaldstätter See in Switzerland. Now, who killed them? Well, it was the Templars, right? And that was a murder staged here on the lake, not that far from where I am, you know, and this entire place is totally Masonic and has crime cartel signaling, and is also the home of, I think, one big fat military base. And there's one hotel on the Vierwaldstätter See. I think it's Hotel Witznau. Yeah, I think it's Hotel Witznau, which had room number 7 was where Churchill stayed on his honeymoon. And this is on the second floor. So room 207 or 307 is where Churchill stayed. And one floor up, so room 307 or 407, is where George Bush Sr. stayed with his wife on a holiday. Both room number 7, both looking out on the same direction to what must be one of the biggest military, you know, things in the mountains under a massively deep lake. And then, you know, not that far away, Princess Beatrix was, as it looks to me like, murdered. So what happened? Well, I think the murder of Beatrix was the blackmail of the Belgian royal family. If you're not in the crime cartel, if you're not in the Satanists, if you're not in the pedophilia, you're gonna, you know, pop your clogs. So it could be that.
And also sometimes they demand you to sacrifice someone to show your loyalty.
Yeah, but ask Alexandra, because she's the, you know, she didn't have the microphone.
No, I would just say that Anne Redels, who is a US-American former psychiatrist, and she is from a generational satanic family, but she gets rid of this. She said that as young, she was with her father on a tour in Europe, in places like London and in Netherlands, but also in Copenhagen, where they had these eyes wide shut type orgies with sacrifice. So in Copenhagen, she said that she was also involved with that. She was forced to do it, of course, but that it was in Copenhagen also. And when the husband of the Danish queen, who is from Sweden, died lately. So it was like Luciferian satanic numbers, like the numerology was of the Luciferian faith. It's faith, it's religion. So it was what I wanted to say. I hope your parents were not involved in that.
So do I.
So, but sorry that you find out about it. What I would like to say, when we were talking about NATO, that still people here many people still believe that the generals are honorable people, and I would highly recommend Kay Grigg's interviews, Illuminati Wise Tells All, I believe, that where she was married to a high NATO general in USA, and that she were talking about this that they are doing terrorism, and also about the homosexual orgies between them, and others said also that if you are like within the homosexual orgies type, you are involved in that, you get up, or if you want to kill children, so your career is like this. And yeah, I don't know how much time Dee said that like we can talk to 4:30, and if it would be maybe possible to talk about the topics, like I would like to talk about next time, if it's possible to meet another time, I would like to talk like what specifically we could go do within the legal system, what it's possible to take maybe some good people who are educated, and then people who are not educated but have good morals and could work and start to also other types of court. I was talking about like people's court of true justice or something like that, that we cannot continue like this, and that also what we could do to like regain the freedom of speech, because Google, YouTube, if you would count the hours of the intellectual property that they have taken from us. Only me, they have taken your lecture from Prague, from Ule, from Prague, from about false flag, your lecture. They removed it. It has cost me like 1 million, half a million of Czech crowns to do this conference, and it's like gone. And also interview with you, and it's probably because I have mentioned also the head of Illuminati. I got strike the day after I have shown a picture of the head of Illuminati. So what does it, in an interview, what does it tell you? And I would like to say also that I will also have a little court case that I'm planning. Can you see this beautiful girl? Can you see her? And she has a ring, heart-shaped ring. I hope you could see her. Yeah. She was 23 years old. She was murdered in a planned murder here in Prague. She lived some 200 meters from me. She was 23. She was murdered on 20th of September 2014. She stabbed herself, they say, 13 times. 3 times in heart, like twice in one side and once in the lung on the other side. The autopsy is that she must have lied down, and she couldn't kill herself because she was right-handed, and it was like if she would be left-handed. But the story was that there was a man inside the apartment where she killed herself. This is ruled suicide. And the man struggled with her to remove the knife that she was killing herself with. But as you two know, that I understand the language of the Illuminati, here on Czech television, it was a satanic ritual in 3 days, the day before she was murdered, the day that she was murdered, and the day after, where they explained for these Illuminati, I say it's satanic hyenism, these rituals, that they was like bragging and like smiling and celebrating that she was murdered, and the same day as she was murdered, the same day the general of Czech army got a high level position in a NATO. And in the Czech television in coded language, you see the heart. They removed the heart post-mortem when she died in the hospital, and they showed that they took it with a airplane, specific airplane with specific pilot, Matthew Burton. The aircraft, I can show you how it looked like. They took it to the head of Illuminati, and it was the price probably that Czech Republic paid this general, so that this general could get his position in a NATO, that we has to pay more money. It's prestige for us to have a general in NATO. They kick him later out, I believe, after it was revealed that this girl was murdered for the heart, for the case of the heart. So they told us that it's such a prestige, and we have to pay. I don't know how much money for his salary. It's NATO. It's what we have got here in Czech Republic. And another girl was 12 years old, was taken to Paris for a ritual to be murdered there on 12th of January 2017 of the head of Illuminati. She was murdered ritually. They show it in these coded, like in codes, and these codes they use for also for so like sacrifice, not kill, but they do legal court cases. They pick somebody. His name is Tito Beltran. It's like Beltane, the satanic celebration, and Tito. So they pick him. They do work together, like the prosecutors, judges, and the newspapermen, the owners, to get this person in prison innocent, and they are happy, like they are celebrating. It's so ugly, so ugly. And I would like to talk about what we could do if we could meet another time. What do you say? Is it possible?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, I also have to say that I can back up everything you're saying, because in my own case, there's exactly these links. So, for example, I made a complaint to the Greater Manchester Police because they attacked me with directed energy weapons. And the police officer who was on my case and did nothing was a so-called Inspector Miskell. Now, Inspector Miskell doesn't appear anywhere on the Greater Manchester Police listing. He just doesn't exist, and all police officers and inspectors are listed most of the time with photograph, and he's not even listed by name. But if you spell capital Miskell, the S is like a 5, so it's like MI5 kill, right? So MI5 tried to kill me. Yeah, I know that, you know. But this Inspector Miskell appears in the press because his partner is said to have died suddenly and unexpectedly. They came home from the gym and she collapsed and she was dead as a dodo. That looks like directed energy weapons to me. And then this police officer was buried in a big ritual, and the Daily Telegraph called it the Great Sacrifice. Now, that's a bit too many coincidences here. So yeah, these people all hang together, and they are code names, and they are, and then I realized, oh my goodness, yes, signaling, this is their language. And it's very easy to understand, because what this signaling is, it's gangster talk. All right, so it's like, for example, in the Netherlands, they used to have the mercenaries, the pirates, you know, everywhere. And in the Netherlands, that's what they call the double Dutch, because that's what these pirates talked amongst each other when they got orders from Vatican Intel, which shipped to loot. You know, they would use coded language in the pubs, and people noticed, and they called it, oh, they're talking double Dutch, like double speak, you know. So that's the coded language, and it's true. You know, once you understand it, you can find out what they're doing. And I think it's very important we have this conversation, because it looks like all of us had these oh my goodness moments. You know, like oh my goodness, I'm at the heart of something really big on here.
One of the things that I found when looking into false flags are also the color coding that they're using, different symbolisms, the dates, the names, the license plate numbers. And when you go to gematria, it always comes out as 33. There's all of these things encoded in the operations where they do it. And also here in Europe, it's all NATO countries. It's circling around and around and around. They just go around in circles. So what we're looking at are NATO operations combined with the US military when it comes to the attacks on populations, but also in death squads down in Latin America, in Vietnam, and in Asia. It's the same forces. And this is also where, when I exposed a lot of these assassins and these death squads and hit teams and identified the different individuals and tracked them down, they just move around in the world. They're the key people. And Chip Tatum, he's a CIA whistleblower and a former assassin himself. He used to work directly under George Bush Sr.'s command. He was the commander of an ultra-secret hit team called Pegasus. And he said that the world of assassins is so small, so small. So it's the same little group of mechanics going around doing it. Because he says it's not for everyone to do. You have to have a very special mental capacity and no emotions and no empathy, whatever, to be able to be a good one. And so I think what is very important of what we are doing is to identify who is doing it to us. And I tell you, I think that we look at a world that looks crazy and full of violence and full of mayhem. Absolutely not. It's a small little tiny group, just like a serial killer can keep the whole of New York in terror by doing random acts of slitting throats or whatever. The whole city of millions of people will be terrified. One individual, one knife. Here we're looking on a similar thing where it looks like the whole world is out of balance. Absolutely not. We live in a beautiful, magnificent place with a tiny little group, like a cancer growth, that is trying to kill us. And with the same mentality as a cancer cell as well, I think, where the ultimate orgasm is when the carrier body dies. I mean, what kind of sick logic is that? But that is what they're doing. So I think happy days are here, because we are nailing it down, we're zeroing in on it. And there was this beautiful woman in the States who said that as a Black American citizen and woman in her 60s, I think, she said in her whole life she known about these things, but she hasn't known the details. And one of the things that I have brought to the world, she said, her words, I put a face on terror. I put facial structure of terror. Now she can see it. She can see where it comes from, and then you can do something about it. So I'm very happy to take part of any of these roundtables anytime with you, Katherine and Alexandra.
What we also need to do is, because there are two things that are present in every single false flag. It's the monetary trail. And there I say the banks have every single, it's all backs and SWIFT, right? It's all, you can't shoot one penny, you know, without this. And even the gold transfer, that's not as easy to do as people think. Now, the second thing that's always present, it's the communications data. And there, William Binney and Kirk Wheatley have this company, Pretty Good Knowledge, and they already blew, you know, it's wide open when they looked. I think they looked at customs data, and they could tell where the drugs are coming in for the CIA. Bill Binney is on public record.
Where the what is coming in?
The drugs. So the cocaine import agency, known as the CIA, is importing. Basically, they are importing the drugs for the entire USA, as far as I can make out. And Bill Binney and Kirk Wiebe are given a data set from the customs service officials, and they could see the drugs being put in. So their software and this big data analysis that they are running allows them to find it surprisingly quickly. So in other words, when we know where to look, we can access the data. And the other thing is, you know how the entire mass surveillance has been gobbling up absolutely everything? Well, it's bad for us, but it's also bad for the other side. You know, just like the Stasi, when people suddenly could access the Stasi archives, the Stasi panicked and they started shredding the archives because they realized they're in really deep shit. So it's the same here. You know, we just need to get into Bluffdale. That's what I'm saying. We just need to take Bill Binney's software architecture with his brains and be asking the right questions and let it be from Bluffdale. We will know who these people are, and we get them in court, you know.
Let's do it.
Yeah, it's important that everybody who can help is involved now, because the most important thing was to uncover this, to see them, to see the structure. And it wasn't so easy in the year 2013 when I started. Like, it was almost that our battle was done, that we were done. It was really, really bad 2013. But now we can see them, and we have even evidence of communication with the head of Illuminati, which Fritz Springmeier has done. And the head of Illuminati, yeah, was bragging that he has a death squad and that he will kill bankers, and then the bankers were killed. And you have a YouTube channel, Lie Killers, which I strongly believe is the head of Illuminati, who is the main like producer, even if he doesn't do it. And you can he doesn't do it himself, but people for him do the videos. And you have a video there, 4 years old, I believe it was 27th of April 2014 that the video was published. It was my birthday, therefore I remember it. But that it's about how they will kill the bankers, how they will kill them, and that they have killed them. And the video was there today still. I checked it. There was a video with death threats to Alex Jones. It was there in more than 4 years, and our videos are removed. On Lie Killers, you have still videos that they will do nuclear attacks on major cities, hard crimes. They will kill specific people like Abbas, Muhammad in Palestine. It's there, he will be killed. And the YouTube channel Lie Killers is still on YouTube, and we have many of us have lost videos. They have removed it, and whole channels. If we would say that how much is for 1 hour our work, and if you would count it together, all of us, and pay us this amount of money to Google, their money are not enough to pay it. It's like the value of the company is much lower than.
By the way, there is an established method in courts to get, damages for exactly that. You just need to learn the terms. A court is just like a computer. You have to press the right button, use the right words to, express what you're saying. But what you're talking about is financial damages arising out of unlawful actions by YouTube. And it's curious because we all got pushed into this perception that you can't do anything. And just as we know with outreach, yes, you can do a lot. I mean, you can become a serious force just by having a laptop and a webcam, and the brain. And the same with sports. It's not true that it has to be super expensive or that it's inaccessible. You just have to know what keywords to say. And I tell you, as we discovered, in the military, people are scared. In the banking sector, people are scared. Not all of them are involved. Some people only realize too late that they were at the heart of it. And the same is true in the courts. But the courts have one advantage, which is the judge the only way he can progress is to make a career in the judiciary. If he pulls some nonsense, his name will be mud, right? So his judicial career is over. And this, in the olden days, it didn't used to be. You had to be corrupt to progress. But now, with transparency on the internet, one judge pulls some nonsense, his judgment is there forever. People will refer back as a false judgment, or potentially as a corrupt judgment, as a corrupt judge. That's it. And a judge can't just go and work at McDonald's, So this is the pressure we have on them. And that's exactly why I want to pull the screw. And the intelligent judges know it very, very well. So they are very careful what sort of judgments they put out there.
Excellent. Alexandra, I need to shoot off.
Yes. So we can maybe meet again 1 week from now or whenever you have time. And we could maybe continue. But thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
And bye-bye.
And thank you, Katherine.
Would you like to say?
No, I just want to say thank you, Katherine. I will not sleep for the next week. My head is spinning, and looking forward to the next one, because my God, it's like. Anyway.
I'm telling you, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh God, when will it ever stop? Have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.